Imagine waking up to find an enemy army crossing mountains no one believed could be crossed. Thousands of seasoned soldiers, hardened cavalry, and even armored war elephants descending from freezing mountain peaks directly into the heart of Italy. Rome had never seen anything like it. This was Hannibal Barca, the Carthaginian general who executed history's most daring military invasion, engineered the ultimate tactical masterpiece at Cannae, and came closer than anyone to completely destroying the Roman Republic. To understand Hannibal's burning drive, we must look at the world before his march. In the 3rd century BC, the Western Mediterranean was divided between two fierce, rising superpowers, the growing Roman Republic in Italy and the wealthy maritime empire of Carthage in North Africa. Intense competition over trade routes and Mediterranean islands ignited the First Punic War. After 23 brutal years of naval warfare, Carthage suffered a devastating, humiliating defeat in 241 BC, stripped of Sicily and forced to pay crushing war indemnities to Rome. Hannibal grew up amidst the bitterness of this defeat, determined to avenge his nation's honor. According to ancient historians Polybius and Livy, when Hannibal was just 9 years old, his father led him to a sacrificial altar. Placing his hand over the bleeding victim, young Hannibal swore a solemn, eternal oath to the gods. "I swear that so long as age and breath permit, I will use fire and steel to arrest the destiny of Rome and never be a friend to the Roman Republic." Born around 247 BC, Hannibal was the eldest son of Hamilcar Barca, one of Carthage's most celebrated commanders during the First Punic War. Rather than growing up in stone palaces, young Hannibal was raised directly inside military camps across Iberia, modern-day Spain. There, his father rebuilt Carthaginian strength by conquering silver-rich Iberian mines and forging loyal veteran legions. Hannibal slept on the ground among the common soldiers, mastered horseback swordsmanship, and absorbed his father's strategic genius. When Hamilcar died in battle and his brother-in-law Hasdrubal fell to an assassin, the army unanimously elected 26-year-old Hannibal as supreme commander of Carthage in Spain. Hannibal wasted no time putting his blood oath into action. In 219 BC, he laid siege to the wealthy coastal city of Saguntum, a Spanish city that had formed a political alliance with Rome. For 8 relentless months, Hannibal battered the city's walls, suffering a severe thigh wound while fighting on the front lines, until Saguntum was completely destroyed. Outraged, the Roman Senate dispatched envoys to Carthage, demanding Hannibal's immediate surrender. When the Carthaginian Senate refused, Rome officially declared war. In 218 BC, the Second Punic War began. Hannibal knew that if he fought defensive naval battles on Carthaginian soil, Rome's vast resources would eventually crush him. To defeat Rome, he had to strike directly at the heart of Italy and convince Rome's Italian allies to rebel. In the late spring of 218 BC, Hannibal launched one of history's most astonishing military campaigns. Departing Spain with 90,000 infantry, 12,000 cavalry, and 37 African war elephants, he marched across the Pyrenees Mountains and crossed the wide, rushing Rhone River under heavy enemy fire. But standing between his army and northern Italy lay the ultimate physical barrier, the freezing, treacherous peaks of the Alps. Crossing late in the autumn season, Hannibal's army faced freezing blizzards, treacherous narrow cliff ledges, starvation, and constant ambushes by hostile mountain tribes who rolled massive boulders down on the marching columns. Elephants and soldiers slipped off freezing ledges into icy chasms below. Yet Hannibal's frontline leadership kept his army moving forward. When the path was blocked by a massive rock slide, his engineers used fire and vinegar to split the boulders and clear the trail. After 16 harrowing days in the mountains, Hannibal descended into northern Italy. Although he lost nearly half his infantry and many elephants, he arrived where Rome least expected him, with a hardened core of elite veterans ready for war. Rome was stunned by Hannibal's sudden arrival in northern Italy and dispatched 2 consular armies to crush the invaders. The first clash occurred in December 218 BC at the Battle of the Trebia River. On a freezing morning, Hannibal sent his Numidian cavalry across the icy Trebia River to provoke the Roman camp before breakfast. The overconfident Roman general Longus ordered his 40,000 cold, hungry legionnaires to wade waist-deep across the freezing water to attack. As the freezing Romans engaged Hannibal's center, 2,000 Carthaginian soldiers hidden inside a brush-covered ravine sprung out from ambush, attacking the Roman rear. Over 30,000 Romans were slaughtered or captured. Following Trebia, Hannibal marched south into central Italy. In 217 BC, he executed the largest ambush in military history at Lake Trasimene. Marching his army along a narrow road between the northern shores of Lake Trasimene and steep hills, Hannibal hid his entire army in the surrounding heights under thick morning fog. When 30,000 Roman soldiers, led by Consul Flaminius, marched onto the narrow road, Carthaginian trumpets echoed from the hills. Emerging from the fog, Hannibal's warriors charged down the slopes, trapping the Roman army against the lake. Within 3 hours, 15,000 Romans were wiped out. Rome was plunged into absolute panic.
By the summer of 216 BC, Rome was desperate to end the Carthaginian terror. The Senate assembled one of the largest armies in the history of the Republic, 80,000 heavily armed infantry and 6,000 cavalry, commanded by consuls Varro and Paulus. On the open plains of Cannae in southern Italy, they marched out to crush Hannibal's outnumbered army of 50,000 men. What followed was Hannibal's absolute tactical masterpiece, the Battle of Cannae. Hannibal intentionally deployed his army in a crescent shape, bulging outward toward the Roman line, placing his weakest Spanish and Celtic infantry in the center, while stationing his elite, battle-hardened African veterans on the far right and left flanks. As the massive Roman legions pushed forward, Hannibal's center intentionally yielded and bent backward, drawing the Romans deeper into a pocket. Meanwhile, Hannibal's heavy cavalry routed the Roman horsemen on the flanks and swung around to seal the rear. Then Hannibal gave the signal. His African veterans on the flanks wheeled inward, snapping shut around the Roman sides like a steel trap. 80,000 Roman soldiers were completely encircled. In a single afternoon of unimaginable slaughter, over 60,000 Roman legionnaires were killed. The deadliest single day of combat in human history. Cannae stands eternal as the ultimate double envelopment.
Following the annihilation at Cannae, Rome was completely defenseless. Hannibal's cavalry commander, Hannibal, urged his general to march immediately on the city of Rome, promising that within 5 days they would dine in the capital. When Hannibal hesitated, Hannibal uttered his famous rebuke. "You know how to win a victory, Hannibal, but you do not know how to use one." Why didn't Hannibal march on Rome? Historians debate several crucial factors. First, Hannibal lacked heavy siege engines and artillery required to breach Rome's massive 30-foot-high stone city walls. Second, his own army had suffered thousands of casualties and was exhausted, short on supplies, and deep in enemy territory. Third, Carthage's politicians back home, led by his political rival Hanno the Great, refused to send the massive siege reinforcements he desperately needed. And finally, despite losing over 100,000 soldiers across 3 battles, the Roman Senate refused to negotiate or surrender. Instead, Rome banned public mourning, enlisted slaves and teenagers, and adopted Fabian guerrilla tactics. Hannibal had crushed Roman armies on the battlefield, but he could not break Rome's iron determination. While Hannibal waged 15 years of undefeated campaign across Italy, a brilliant young Roman commander emerged, Publius Cornelius Scipio, later known as Scipio Africanus. Scipio had survived the carnage of Cannae as a teenager and spent years carefully studying Hannibal's tactical maneuvers. Recognizing that Hannibal could not be defeated on Italian soil, Scipio executed a bold strategic counterstroke. He conquered Carthage's stronghold in Spain and launched a direct naval invasion of North Africa.
terrified by Roman legions at their gates, the Carthaginian Senate recalled Hannibal home. In 202 BC, the two master strategists met at the Battle of Zama on the African plains. Hannibal deployed 80 war elephants to crush Scipio's infantry line, but Scipio anticipated the tactic and ordered his legionnaires to form open, parallel lanes inside their formations. When the elephants charged, Roman soldiers blew loud horns and opened the lanes, allowing the terrified beasts to rush harmlessly through without disrupting the Roman line. Then, Scipio's Roman and Numidian cavalry routed Hannibal's horsemen and charged into the rear of the Carthaginian infantry, using Hannibal's own Cannae encirclement tactic against him. Hannibal was defeated. The Second Punic War ended with Rome victorious, and Carthage was reduced to a second-rate power. Following the defeat at Zama, Hannibal proved he was as brilliant a statesman as he was a general. Elected chief magistrate of Carthage, he reformed the corrupt tax system and rebuilt the city's economy so rapidly that Rome grew terrified Carthage would rise again. Demanding his arrest, Rome forced the 52-year-old general into exile. For the next 15 years, Hannibal roamed the eastern Mediterranean, serving as a military advisor to Hellenistic kings fighting against Roman expansion. But Rome's vengeance was relentless. In 183 BC, Roman envoys surrounded his royal residence in Bithynia, demanding his extradition in chains. True to the solemn blood oath he had sworn 60 years earlier, the 64-year-old general refused to suffer the humiliation of a Roman triumph. Opening a secret compartment inside his ring, Hannibal drank lethal poison, uttering his final words, "Let us now relieve the Romans of their fears, since they are too impatient to wait for an old man to die." Hannibal Barca died in exile, but his immortal legacy forever transformed military strategy. He proved that even the most formidable world superpower could be pushed to the brink of annihilation through psychological warfare, asymmetric maneuver, and frontline leadership. His double envelopment at the Battle of Cannae remains the gold standard of tactical perfection, taught in every major military academy around the globe, from West Point to Sandhurst. For centuries after his death, Roman mothers would hush their crying children by whispering, "Hannibal ad portas," Hannibal is at the gates. He may not have destroyed Rome, but he forever changed. Hannibal Barca nearly brought Rome to its knees through pure tactical genius. But centuries earlier, another legendary warrior led just 300 Spartans against a Persian empire of millions, standing defiant at the gates of fire. In our next episode, we explore the immortal stand and heroic sacrifice of King Leonidas and the 300 Spartans at Thermopylae. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications right now so you don't miss it.